Coming up on today's episode.
People ask me when they find out that I work in a hospice, they often say, I don't understand how you could do that. You must be sad all the time. So it's great to put that myth to the side and explain that it's not. To remember everyone matters, and for patients to feel that they matter at the end of life is so powerful, even when they can't do everything for themselves anymore. Their life matters, and what they believe matters. And finding joy in even a small thing each day matters. And if it matters to them, then it matters to me.
Welcome to The Changemakers, a podcast shining a light on the people who dedicate their careers to changing the lives of others. I'm Lydia Parkin.
And I'm Claire Edwards.
We're both former journalists who now work in the third sector.
In this podcast, we will talk to society's fixers, menders, mopper-uppers and fighters about why they do their job, what they see in their work and why it matters. This is a commentary on our world and the often unsung heroes within it, who can only do their work because members of the public choose to support them through donations or fundraising activity.
To them, their job may just be that, their job. But to us, it's remarkable what they do and achieve every day. Their stories deserve to be heard.
Lydia, I've brought a prop.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
Merry Christmas! Does it feel like Christmas now?
Merry Christmas, everyone.
It was either that, Lydia, or I sing you a carol, so I think I've spared you the pain and just brought my jingle bells along.
Yeah, I love you, Claire, but I think I have heard you sing before, and I think you are probably correct.
Not my forte. But yes, Merry Christmas, everybody. We are deliberately scheduling this episode for Christmas Day, although it's a week before Christmas now. We've got a week to go. Are you ready for your first Christmas with your little girl?
I'd love to say that I'm one of these very organised people who has done all the shopping and has put all the decorations up and is raring to go. But I'm not one of those people. The house is pretty much decorated, but there are still a few presents to buy. But it will happen. We've got another week. It will be all good. I'm sure it'll come together on the day. How about you? Are you ready?
No, Lydia, I'm very much in the same camp as you. I'm not ready. And the last few weeks, for anyone who listens who works in the charity sector, or to be fair, probably most sectors, it has been so busy at work and so full on, so much fundraising. So I'm struggling to spin all the plates, but we're getting there.
Yeah, and I think that's actually like a really nice segue into our next interview, because a lot of you will know that myself and Claire work in the charity sector, and Claire works at a hospice. And do you want to introduce who our next guest is going to be, Claire?
I do, yes. I spoke to Karen Delin today, who is the ward sister at Saint Francis Hospice, which is based just outside Romford in Essex. It was just me though, Lydia. Should we quickly say why it's just me?
Yes, it is just Claire. Unfortunately, and it's extra hard at this time of year, but we have a very poorly dog. Our Labrador Monty is not very well at the moment, and I had to take him to the vets today when the interview was scheduled. So unfortunately, I've had to miss this, which I'm really gutted about, because I was really excited to meet Karen and hear about her role and how she makes change. But tell me, how did it go?
It was a really, really special conversation. She is a very special person. And as we said, it's a week to go till Christmas. So by the time this goes out, I expect the majority of us are busy perfecting Christmas dinner, or maybe they're surrounded by wrapping paper, maybe travelling. Our guest today will be at work. Yes, Karen, as I said, is a ward sister at Saint Francis Hospice. She's worked there for 28 years in total. She started as a bank nurse, but since working for them full time in 2005, she thinks she's only missed 4 Christmas days. So she always tries to work on Christmas Day. So I wanted to know what inspired her to work in an area of nursing that many of us will wrongly assume is really sad or difficult. And obviously all the special things that they will be doing today for patients and their families who need hospice care over Christmas. It is a beautiful listen. Amazingly, Karen knew she wanted to be a nurse from the age of 5. So I started off by asking her if there was a defining moment that meant that I asked her if there was a defining moment that sent her in the direction of palliative care specifically. So over to this week's change maker, Karen.
There was actually. I trained and then went on to work on the wards at the London Hospital, as it was known then, before it became the Royal London. And what happened was I ended up choosing to be on 2 cancer units and the radiotherapy unit during my training. And then when I became a staff nurse, I was always the one that was calling the Macmillan nurse down to speak to a patient. And then shortly after, like maybe into my 2nd or 3rd year after I qualified, the Macmillan nurse said to me, I really think you need to go and do your palliative care course. And she recommended I did the course at Saint Francis. And it just made sense. So I did the course. And at the time, the way the course was organized, you had placements. It wasn't just all academic study, you actually had placements. So I was placed on the inpatient unit at the hospice. And the rest is really history, because I never really wanted to work anywhere else after that. So shortly after I went on maternity leave, I applied to work on the bank, and I got the place on the bank when just as I found out I was pregnant with my son. So my son will be 28 in a couple of months. Wow. And so I started working on the bank, and I did that for about 9 years. And then thought, no, this is really what I want to do. And so I applied for the permanent post. So I've been there on the permanent staff since 2005. And yeah, I definitely got bit with the bug.
Was nursing something you'd always wanted to do previously?
Absolutely. I spoke about wanting to be a nurse since I was about 5 years old. Wow. So it was always what I thought I'd do. And, you know, I'm thrilled that I've stuck with what I always wanted to do and developed into it.
Was there something particular then about palliative care that appealed to you, or the hospice environment? What was it that felt special or right to you or kind of connected with you?
I think what I got out of working at the hospice was, to me, that was perfect nursing care. That was giving a patient everything that they needed, the time for the actual personal nursing care, and time for the person and the family. And I just found that amazing, that you were supported to be able to have that time. You know, you weren't rushed. You know, in general nursing, sometimes you feel rushed to always do, you know, I could look after 20, I've been allocated 15 patients today or 18 patients today. And so you couldn't give that personal time. And I just found it exciting that we were given that personal time, the right amount of time to look after a patient and their family. And yeah, that's what interests me. That's what I love about the job.
And can you tell us a bit about your role as ward sister specifically? What does a typical day look like to you?
So as a ward sister, you're really aiming to manage and balance all the needs of ward, not just with the small case of patients. So instead of looking after, like, say, 4 or 5 patients on a shift, you're responsible for all the patients, but also all the staff on the unit. That's a huge balance as a ward sister, you know, to make sure that the patients that are there are being well looked after, the staff are being well looked after, and making sure that we're bringing in the patients that need to come in and that need our care and our support.
This is probably quite a broad question, because I know you look after people with a whole range of illnesses, but what sort of Could you tell us a bit about the sorts of conditions people have, and what sort of care and needs do they have from you on the inpatient unit?
Yeah. So I think that's really an interesting question, because when I was thinking about doing this podcast, I was thinking back to all the years I've been at the hospice. And I know that when I first started at the hospice, mainly we only saw patients with cancer. And we also had respite beds, which were most often used for patients that had MND, motor neuron disease. And over the years, the hospice movement's changed so much that dynamic has changed. So we look after anybody that has a life-limiting illness. So it's not limited to just cancer. So we look after people, obviously, with cancer, with motor neuron disease. We look after patients that are maybe have end stage of another life-limiting disease. So it could be end stage heart failure or end stage respiratory failure. Some more complex lung diseases that can cause people to need palliative support. It's very hard to access support for complex medical needs, and people need to look outside the box and consider palliative care and hospice care, even if a patient doesn't have cancer. So I think that's a real change in society now, and it's the change within the healthcare. The medical team, nursing, clinical nurse specialists need to remember to involve hospice care for patients at end stage of their life.
What is it that a hospice can do at that time that makes such a difference?
Well, sometimes it's the idea of looking out for symptoms and caring for symptoms instead of trying to cure somebody. So it might be that the curative path might not be as effective or even possible, but people have symptoms that need to be managed. And sometimes it's very hard you can't just look at one part of their life. So coming into hospice, we look at a patient holistically, and we'll look at all their needs, not just one aspect of it. So it could be loads of symptom management care needs. So it could be shortness of breath, but it could also be mobility. It could be anxiety and fear. And, we could look at all of that. And our multidisciplinary team can be involved with trying to meet each part of their needs.
And is that a bit about what you were saying before, that actually you also have the time to do that? You have the time to fully understand each person and what is affecting them and what they do need from you. It must be a real privilege to be able to do that.
That's exactly the right word. It is a real privilege. When you have a patient that comes into the hospice and they're being admitted, usually our admission process could take, well up to an hour, maybe even longer than an hour, because we're trying to find out about the person. We're not just saying, oh, you're here for your breathlessness. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're looking at all different aspects of their needs. And I think that's what's really important. So not just on admission, but they see a doctor every day. There's ward rounds, and the time is spent with our patients to ask the questions and find out what's needed and see how they're improving or not improving, and what else needs to be brought in to bring about some improvements to their care needs. And I think that's what's so lovely about the hospice. We do get that time. If it's a nurse looking after a patient, giving personal care, sometimes we're with the patient for over an hour giving personal care, and you get to have just normal conversations with them, so you could find out even more information that you wouldn't be able to find out just by sitting down and saying, okay, let's talk about this.
Because it will come out naturally, like in a conversation.
Absolutely. And it's really lovely. And it's not being nosy. It's patients know that we want to help them and we want to find out about them as an individual. So the more we find out, the more we provide help.
Yeah.
And that's really what makes it special.
Yeah. Can you tell me a story, and this must be difficult with 28 years of experience, but of someone under your care that you think really demonstrates why hospices are so important and why that approach to care makes such a difference?
Yeah, there was there's a lot of people I could think about. One patient, she came to us and she said, very early on, she was very scared. She was scared about coming into the hospice. And she found the whole thing very daunting. And one of the days I was looking after her, we had just some things happened and it created a very fun environment. We just could not stop laughing. And I think she knew that I got her sense of humor. She was thrilled she got my sense of humor. And we had just a good laugh between us. But also at the end of her stay, she was very clear that she gained so much comfort from being at the hospice. And she was being discharged home. We got on top of her symptoms. She was being discharged home. But she said one thing that meant the world to her is she knew she felt comfortable to come back. And she had chosen the hospice as her preferred place of death, her PPD. And she knew she'd feel comfortable to come back. And she actually came back to us, I think 3 times. So two more times where we just got on top of her symptoms and she was able to go back home again. And the 3rd time she knew she came in to die. But what I found so enjoyable was that one of the other 2 times, I can't remember the 2nd or 3rd, but one of those times she came in and she said to me, I have to share with you something. And I said, what? She said, I've come up with my plan for my funeral. And it gave her so much peace that she had that time to come up with a plan for her funeral. And she shared it with me. She says, I'm not telling everyone, but I wanted to share it with you. And that meant so much to me. And when she came back in, we all knew her very well. And she said, I just feel so comfortable being here. And, she wasn't sure that was the last time, but it ended up being the last time. And as she deteriorated, she just knew that she felt comfortable. There was no anxiety, there was no fear. And that's a very special journey to be part of.
It's beautiful. And I think having someone feel so comfortable and so looked after and so safe is incredible, really, that someone can feel that way.
Hi, it's Lydia here. A quick interruption. The Changemakers podcast exists to spread the word about the work people are doing right now to make a difference for others. If you're enjoying the conversation, why not tell a friend or 2 about the podcast and help us reach as many people as possible? Or you could share our content on social media. You can find us on Instagram at the Changemakers Pod. Thank you.
I imagine that tackling fear and anxiety is quite a normal part of your job. It must be something that a lot of your patients feel, especially when it's the first time they've come in or they may not really know about hospices.
Yeah, absolutely. I think fear is a huge element. I think you could sometimes see it in a patient's eyes when they come in and they're just overwhelmed. And one of the things that is quite heartwarming is sometimes within the first day or the first couple of days, a patient will then just completely change and they'll say, I can't believe that I was frightened to come in here. And this is, and all of you were so lovely. And, I have so much, calm in me now that I'm here. And I've heard that, countless times, and you can see the difference in someone's face, you know, from the first moment they walk in to sometimes the next morning, and they're tucking into their first full English breakfast in ages, and they'll say, gosh, I haven't had an appetite for weeks, but I've really enjoyed this. And I think sometimes it's pure fear that, you know, they've come in and they don't know what to expect. And, you know, after the first couple of days, they're like, I just can't believe that I feel so comfortable.
How do you personally try and make someone feel comfortable? How do you tackle that job?
I think one of the things is actually saying, I know you might be scared to be here. I think that's one of the things I often say during an admission. You know, it is scary because everyone has preconceived ideas. And sometimes I've said, you know, just take time, just give us time, you'll get to know us and we'll get to know you, and it will settle down, you'll feel comfortable here. And I think that's one of the biggest things we could do, is just let someone know that it's understandable to feel frightened, and just give yourself time and you'll settle in. I think one thing people don't expect is the actual personal elements that they come to be greeted with. So if it's a case of finding out, you know, do they prefer a shower, or they prefer a bath, or do they prefer it in the morning or the night? It's, you know, something like that. Sometimes they're like, oh, I didn't realize I had these choices. Would you want to go out in the garden? But I can't get out of bed. That's okay. The bed could go outside with, you know, you could stay in the bed and the bed will go outside. And those sort of choices, sometimes people don't realize they have that.
Yeah, they actually got more control and more choices than maybe they thought they would have coming in.
Absolutely. And those are really lovely, you know, to be asked, do you want to see somebody for complementary therapy? Do you want to see somebody on the pastoral care team? You know, sometimes people don't realize they have those choices, and extend it to the family.
And how important is that to you? The fact that actually you have other teams in the hospice, you have other disciplinaries that you can call upon to help that person too, and their families. Is that something that you value and that matters to you as a nurse, that you have all these other people as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when I've always appreciated it from the start that, you know, if you know a family member's stressed, you know, do they need counseling? Do they need somebody to talk to? Do they need somebody from the pastoral care team to speak to? Do they need complementary therapy? And, you know, when you figure out what it is they need and you can arrange it, sometimes just seeing their relief. Oh my gosh, I was able to talk to somebody. Somebody sat down and spent some time with me. That's wonderful. The complementary therapy. You mean I could have a massage too? Is usually what they, you know, they just can't get over it. That's really special. And I think, you know, having come through the other side of COVID, not only, you know, obviously complementary therapy was one of the things that was very, very difficult to deliver during COVID. But the team did a fantastic job with the limitations that they had. And when they did get back up and running to being very hands-on with patients, there was a time where we didn't have enough availability to extend it to the family again. And now that's come back, and it's come back to being able to be offered. And it's wonderful to see that again, and to know that the families can have some relaxation offered to them. Yeah, because that joy that I saw years ago, and then to see it again, having seen a break, is quite, it's very special to be able to see that again.
And actually, how important is that to you to look after loved ones too? Because actually, if someone you care about deeply is experiencing a life-limiting illness, it's difficult and it's hard and it's tiring and it's stressful. How much is that a part of your job that you enjoy, that actually the loved ones come into it as well? they come under your care too?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. The family is so important to what we do. Sometimes just understanding somebody else is all it takes. I'm sorry, I find it quite emotional actually sometimes. When you talk about the fear on the patient's face when they come in, it's so often also on the family's member's face. And sometimes just, you can't take away their pain, their emotional pain. You can't take away that. But sometimes just knowing that you could hold their hand and be there and give them space to be with their family member, their loved one, is very important, because sometimes they've been the one that's been the carer and they've had to take on the carer role. And when they come into the hospice, the weight taken off their shoulders is quite overwhelming. And they get to be the daughter again, or they get to be the wife again, or the husband again. And that's a very unique thing to be able to do for somebody, because sometimes it could be just short weeks that they've been a carer, and sometimes it could be months that they've had to be the carer role. And to be able to sit down and just be the wife again is very special. And I think that it's just an important part of our job. We need to look after the family, because they're the ones that are special to the patient.
Do you find commonly people feel like they failed in coming into the hospice? I know it's something I've heard before, that people often want to look after their loved ones for as long as they can, but actually the reality is that for some people it's just so hard, and having that extra support, as you say, allows them to be husband, wife, sister, daughter again. But do some people find it hard to relinquish that when they first come in? Is that something you see and have to tackle with the families?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of people do feel guilt. They feel like they failed, that they couldn't keep them at home, especially if that's where the patient wanted to be. And sometimes in that particular instance, we have managed to get someone discharged back home, but they've come in, we've managed to get on top of their symptoms, so they're not, the family aren't dealing with uncontrolled symptoms and worrying about it. And that's a major step. And then we've also been able to provide the good discharge planning, so they have the support when they do go home, and they have a package of care, and they have the district nurse, and they know that they have that support back at home.
Yeah.
So then if the patient did want to die at home, the family feels supported in doing that. So we could do it that way too, and then it's not, the family member doesn't have to feel that they failed.
No, definitely.
So it can work very well that way. And it can work another way, where the patient realizes, this is the right place for me and for my husband, or for my daughter, or for whoever was looking after them at home. This is the right place. I know I wanted to die at home, but actually this is better.
Yeah. We're recording this only a few days from Christmas, when most of us will be panicking about last minute shopping or confirming menu choices for the visiting family. Can you describe what the hospice is like at this time of year? Do you have many patients in, and how do they feel as Christmas approaches?
Yeah, Christmas, it's a very special time, and it's a very sensitive time at the hospice. Once we get to the beginning of December and patients come in, quite often their goal is that they want to be home for Christmas. And we work with them. So if it's possible, and we're able to manage to get on top of their symptom management, successfully, we will plan for discharge home. And that's a wonderful goal, and that's what we do try to achieve. Sometimes patients aren't able to manage to be discharged home, but they can manage to be home for a day, and we've organised that quite often in the past. So we might have a patient able to get into the family car and go home, or be in a wheelchair and manage a wheelchair transfer back into a transport vehicle and get home that way. And so we have patients that will go home for a day, or will be discharged home a couple of days before Christmas, which is wonderful to achieve those two goals for a patient.
For those who can't get home, what do you do on the ward to make it feel special for patients?
We try really hard to make the ward as special as it can be, and we try to make the environment as best as it possibly can be. Often, and I've been at the hospice and worked on Christmas numerous times, and most of the times we've had a much smaller number of patients on the unit because of our aim to get everyone home if possible. So we try our hardest to make the unit as special as it could be, and some of it is just the fact that we try to keep up a nice environment, a nice atmosphere, a warm, cheerful atmosphere. But we also have to be appropriate for the patients that are on the unit. But some of the things that I can remember doing, we had a patient, they were being nursed in a bay with, I think, 2 other patients there at the time, but the other 2 patients were going home for the day. And this one particular patient couldn't go home. And the family asked us if there was any way we could bring in a table into the room so that they could come and at least be in the room with the family. The patient wasn't able to get out of bed. And we said, no, that's no problem. And this is how everybody pulls together, because the catering staff were involved, the domestic staff were involved, and we got a couple of tables. I think they ended up having maybe 16 family members in on that day.
Wow.
This was a few years ago. I know sometimes we do struggle with so many visitors, but on Christmas Day we try our hardest. And we set up this lovely table for them, and the kitchen staff went out their way and they got decorative tablecloth, and we had crackers and all of everything that we could think of doing. And the family all booked in to have the Christmas dinner at the hospice, and then they brought in extra things to make it more personal to them. And this patient was able to have their bed very close to the table. We were able to get the bed into a sort of chair positions. They were sitting up quite well. And he was able to share the Christmas with the family in this room by themselves, with a long table and the children. And it was very, very special. And those are just beautiful times to have together.
And they'll never forget that, will they, that family? That will stay with them forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really heartwarming to know that we've managed that.
And you think you've missed 4 Christmases since 2005, which is extraordinary. Can you tell us a bit about why you choose to work at Christmas time?
Well, some of it is a personal reason. I don't celebrate Christmas. And I think if I could be there for Christmas, that's one less nurse that has to be there, one nurse that could be with their family, and I get to spend Christmas making it special, and that's really lovely. I mean, to me, I get the joy of that, and it's just a beautiful time to share with people, to make really special, happy memories. And if I could do that, then that's great.
And will you be working this coming Christmas Day?
Yes, I'm working Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Do you have any idea about the patients you have at the moment and anything special you're doing this year?
We haven't started planning. Probably sometimes it's just to allow, a family to have some quiet space together, or be in the dining room and organize the Christmas dinner for them, and just let the families know what's available. I think that's really important, to let them know that they can actually order the Christmas dinner and be there with their family. That's a really big thing. And it's always lovely because we get Christmas carolers come in, and that's very special to have them come in and go around to all the patients that want to have people singing with them.
Does Father Christmas visit the hospice?
One thing we do is Father Christmas, so to speak, leaves little presents for all our patients, and it's wonderful because when the patients wake up and they see something at the end of their bed, they can't quite understand it, and we say, "Oh, this is for you," and they can't understand, and we say it's just something special from the hospice, and they just are quite overwhelmed that the hospice thinks of such special things. We get lots. We are very well supported, and we get many donations to allow us to give special things to the patients during Christmas.
Lovely.
And that's really wonderful.
How does this role impact you on a personal level?
I think it shapes me. I think the role shapes me. It's what I've always wanted to do, to be a nurse, but it's well over 30 years that I've wanted to be in palliative care, and I think it's because it shapes me. It just gives me my focus. I love what I do, and after all these years, it's quite nice to be in a job that you could say you still love what you do. Not many people can say that, and I feel very privileged to be in a job that I still love.
Are there days when it's difficult?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. There's days that are very, very challenging, very sad days, and sometimes just really, really painfully sad days. I think I wouldn't be human if it wasn't, and that's okay. That's the trade-off for something that you want to do, that you feel passionate about. That's the trade-off, because we're working with people, and they're at their very sensitive time in their lives. So it is what is expected of the role. I feel it's a very special place to be, that after all these years, I can have people touch me in my life. Every day is something new, so I don't take that for granted. So like when I meet a patient for the first time, I might have seen things similar to what that person is presenting with, but it doesn't make any difference. That person has not been in this position before, and this is new to them, and this is frightening to them, and that is what I focus on. Is that I need to look at this person as an individual, and not. I would never want to become casual about what I do. Every day I acknowledge that's something special, and I think that's what keeps my focus.
How do you support each other? I mean, as ward sister, so you said you're responsible for your staff. On those tough days when you have particularly tough things going on, how do you support each other as a team and as colleagues?
Well, I think we work very well together, because everyone that's at the hospice, all the staff, are very aware that we could be having a rough day. And it could be for personal reasons. It could be something in someone's own personal life that's making it really tough, or because of what's happening at work. And I think we're really good at trying to support each other. And it could be just to say, let's just sit down and have a cup of tea together. Or after work, do you want to just sit and chat for a few minutes? Those are, really important little moments. And it could be that even when we're busy, just to take somebody to the side and just say, okay, I know this is a really hard day. This is really challenging. I'm here if you want to talk. Just let's catch our breath for a minute and then we'll take the next step. And I think that's sometimes really important to do, because you could get caught up in being really emotional, know that it's a really challenging day, and you think you just have to keep going. But really, sometimes you just need to stop and acknowledge what's going on and acknowledge how difficult it is, and accept that it's okay to feel overwhelmed with something or sad. It's okay. That's normal. That's natural. And just catch your breath and take the next step. And I think that's what I do for myself, and I try to do for everyone I'm working with.
Are there people who stay with you for any reason in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be all manner of reasons. Sometimes it's a patient that you've had a laugh with. I can remember something over 20 years ago that happened that still makes me laugh, and it's wonderful. And sometimes it's because you know how difficult something was, something that was really challenging. Sometimes it's because of a deep conversation you've had with a family member or a patient, and those moments stay with you when you know you've made a difference, and you've acknowledged something, or they've acknowledged something with you, and you know that you've made a difference. And that's lovely, and that will always stay with me because it's special.
Yeah. You said it shaped you. How do you think it has shaped you or changed you as a person, this job?
I try to be much more patient with people. Sometimes that's not easy in everyday life, but you still try to be much more patient. I'm really focused on looking at people as an individual. And I think I do that inside work and outside work. And because I think you never know what's happening in someone else's life. I'm at work and I see things that, is really sad and really difficult. But any one of those relatives, for example, could be out in a shop and no one knows what's happening in their life. And I look at it that way, that, that person needs kindness and support and caring. And yet, anyone else wouldn't know that. Just treat everyone with kindness, be patient, and I think that's really important in life. I think, it puts things into perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
I think anyone that works in a hospice would say that. Probably anyone that works in nursing anyway, but particularly in a hospice, you would say it puts things in perspective. You know what's important in life, and you focus on that.
Definitely. Is there anything about your role that may surprise people or won't be what they expect?
I think maybe not just in my role, but just as in the hospice in general. A lot of people don't expect the hospice to be joyful, lively. I would hope everyone would expect it to be warm and caring. But, the staff do try to, because we're trying to treat everyone as an individual, well, sometimes that includes fun banter and lively chats and things like that. And that's wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful. And I think sometimes people don't expect that when they go into the hospice, that there'd be chatting and liveliness and a good fun atmosphere at times. Sometimes, sadness creeps in, but we all want to be warm and kind and caring to each other. So, we have a nice atmosphere.
And that's actually, it brings me nicely onto public perception of hospices.
Mm.
What do you think generally the public think of hospices in this country? What do they do? What are they there for? What are they like?
I think there's still very much an old perception of hospices. I think the majority of people would still expect it to be just the place you go to die. And most likely also considering it to be only for people with cancer. Mm-hmm. I think those perceptions are still there. And so that also brings a lot of the fear about hospices.
Yeah.
And I think there's a huge improvement over the last number of years. I definitely see an improvement about talking about palliative care instead of just hospice end-of-life care. I think people are starting to talk about bringing in palliative care earlier into a conversation with their doctors. And I think that's wonderful, and that's the best way we could go. But going forward, I think we still have a long way to go with it. We need to, the more we could talk about hospices, the more we could break down the stereotypes and the fear and the stigma. One thing that happens to me often, people ask me when they find out that I work in a hospice, they often say, I don't understand how you could do that. You must be sad all the time. So it's great to put that myth to the side and explain that it's not. And people are always surprised when I explain that some patients still go home and are discharged home. And patients don't only come to the hospice to die. And that has been the biggest part of my conversations. And I speak to many people about hospice care because once they find out I'm a hospice nurse, they can't stop asking questions. And I always make sure I explain that because I think it's so important. And they find that fascinating that, patients come in, they could go home too. Mm-hmm. And I explain, we've had a patient that was discharged home and came back to us, I'd say at least 5-6 times over a couple of years, and people are really surprised about that. But because we are there for symptom management, that is the ideal, that is showing what symptom management is about, and what palliative care is about. So it is wonderful, and I take quite a great amount of pride in explaining about hospices, and I love any opportunity I get. So yeah, I do that a lot.
Do you ever notice how hospices are portrayed in the media? So 2 examples I can think of are soaps. It was quite a long time ago, but EastEnders was criticised for a portrayal of a hospice because they were calling the hospice dingy. When there was a person who was needing the hospice, and it was awful. The visual of the hospice and the way that they were looked after there was not a fair representation of how it is in real life. And much more currently, there's a storyline in Coronation Street at the moment, a patient who's got motor neurone disease, and I keep saying to the TV, he's been told he has 6 to 12 months to live. And I'm like, when are they going to start saying a hospice could be helping this man? Because I know it's a soap, but I feel like it's such a good opportunity to reach millions of people and help to break down that and increase understanding. Do you notice those sorts of things? Do they irritate you or frustrate you, or do they pass you by? Is it just me getting angry?
No, I mean, if I saw that, I would have the same sort of reaction. I definitely would have the same sort of reaction, because you'd want someone to say, let's talk about how to manage your symptoms and what else do you need, and what other support can we offer. So the earlier that palliative care can be brought in, the better it is for somebody. And that's been proven over and over again in loads of research. So yes, it would be wonderful if they could bring that into something like a soap opera storyline. I haven't seen either storyline, but I would find it amazing if they could bring it in.
The majority of hospices in this country, while partially funded by the NHS, rely on charitable donations to survive. And they've actually been in the headlines quite a few times in the last 12 to 18 months with the rising cost of living, providing services, reduced donations. It's been putting them under financial pressure. At Saint Francis Hospice, specifically where you work, it will cost about £8 million this year to run, and about 28% of that cost is covered by the NHS. Do you reflect on this in your daily work? Does it influence you and what you do at all?
It definitely influences every day. We're supported by fantastic fundraisers as part of a charity. And we want to know that we're doing the best we possibly can with every penny that's raised. So the services have to be running well, and we have to be using the services to the best of their ability. I think that's an important aspect to be mindful of as a person that's working in a hospice. We definitely, if you're working in the NHS, you wouldn't want to waste any money. And likewise, working in a hospice, you just don't want to waste any money. You want to know that every penny counts, and we're putting to good use every penny that's raised by our fundraisers.
Have you got involved with fundraising yourself?
Yes, I have gotten involved. I did a couple of walks in the past for the hospice. I've hosted a tea at my house for the hospice. So I've done many of those things. I will never run.
Can't get you to do the marathon then.
It's never going to happen. I can make tea and I can make cake. And just sharing the information about the hospice in any way I can. In any shop I go into in the hospice collection pot is there, I always make reference, because I just think put a personal slant on it and say thank you, thanks for putting that collection tin there, because it really means a lot to us. And I think it just makes it more personal.
That's really nice. Being an advocate for your organisation out and about is, I imagine, a huge benefit and for the charity, and will make a really big difference. The hospice movement was set up by Dame Cicely Saunders, as you all know, and she noticed there was room for change in the way we care for people at the end of their life. She famously said, and I don't want to quote this wrong, but you matter because you are you. You matter to the end of your life. We will do all we can, not only to help you die peacefully, but also to live until you die. How much did this approach motivate you?
Well, that quote means so much to me. I just think it's an amazing, powerful quote. And I think to remember everyone matters, and for a patient to feel that they matter at the end of life is so powerful. I mean, how amazing is it to allow someone to support a person and let them know that what they need and what they believe in matters, even when they can't do everything for themselves anymore. Their life matters, and what they believe matters. And finding joy in even a small thing each day matters. And if it matters to them, then it matters to me. And that's what's really important.
And you feel that as strongly now as you did all those years ago when you first started training?
Absolutely. 100%. And if anything, it just keeps growing. I mean, I just, I'm in the middle of doing a master's module, and I'm studying at Cicely Saunders Institute. And I find that a great pride that I'm following more education, more knowledge, building all my knowledge base. And I find that really exciting, that that her legacy lives on tremendously, and hearing people from all around the world wanting to improve palliative care and end-of-life care. It's quite amazing to watch and be part of.
This podcast is called The Changemakers because it's about people who make change. How do you view yourself and the impact of the change you are making to people?
I just take great pride in the thought that I can make a change to someone's life. I hold that really dearly to me all the time. I just, when I'm at work, I just think if I could just help somebody, if it's the patient or a family member or someone special to them, I'm very fortunate to be and privileged to be part of someone's life and at that time of their life.
So there are a lot of people that you would have had that impact on in your time. So we're talking big numbers. And I don't think you don't forget a hospice.
And it's always interesting because sometimes I've bumped into people either that I've met at the hospice and they're a family member and I've met them years later and they remember everything. But just hearing the impact that we've had on somebody and the family, the wider family, and it's amazing. And it's great because, you could bring that back to work and say, do you know, I've bumped into this person, or do you remember that person? And we do remember people. It's really special.
That's really special. We always ask our guests how listeners can be part of the change that you're making. So some listening may know about hospices and had personal experiences. Others may have never even thought about them. What do you think listeners can do to support the hospice movement and further the mission of the hospice movement?
That's an interesting question. I think because this isn't just about Saint Francis Hospice and it's about all hospices, I think find out where your nearest hospice is. Find out where their nearest shops are that you could support. So to support them financially with donations, and also to speak about the hospice and share that there's a local hospice, maybe with friends and family, and to take the information within this podcast and talking about change and sort of just allow the information to change maybe your perspective a little bit, to change that hospices aren't just about dying. They're there for people that are dying, and that's really important because we want to support patients that need our care, but they're there for many other reasons during a whole range of symptom management needs and palliative care needs, and just to learn about that aspect of it, and yes, to hold on to that and not be frightened about hospices. So if it affects you in your life at any other stage, you won't be frightened. You'll be able to understand what it involves and what it entails.
I've got one last question for you. Can you complete this sentence for me? Success to me is, looking back at your life, your career, what do you consider to be success?
I think going back to your comments about the storyline was a Coronation Street with an M&D patient.
Yeah.
I think going back to that, success to me would be for people be offered palliative care at an earlier stage. I think that would be success to me, because wherever they are in their illness, when it's right to bring in palliative care, I think it needs to be brought in earlier, to be accepted earlier, to be supported earlier.
What do you think would bring about that change?
There is a whole program, ambitions of palliative and end-of-life care through the NHS. And I think there will be, I feel quite confident there are changes being made. And I do believe that the ambitions are there. I think it involves a lot of re-education. It involves training doctors to not be scared to bring in a palliative care conversation earlier. It's not a failure in the system. It's not a failure of their work. It's a supportive system. So bringing in palliative care earlier is giving the best possible care for their patients.
Yeah.
And that is success. Encouraging the whole medical environment, the whole medical system to consider palliative care at an early stage. And maybe part of soap storylines and conversations on television, allowing the general public to hear the terms in casual conversation, so it's not a frightening situation. I think that would be a really positive step forward.
Definitely. That's a really good answer to the question. And I'm totally going to keep it in. I'm not going to get rid of it. But is there like a personal success?
Well, I think success for me is knowing that I've done the best I possibly can to help a patient on a personal level. That's my success. And when that happens, that's, I'm just happy. I'm just proud of achieving that. Because that's what I want. I want that for each patient. Success on a much bigger scale, to me, would be that people can talk about end of life. They could talk about palliative care without being frightened.
Yeah.
Because they know that there's a support system there for them.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been so nice to talk to you today, Karen. Thank you so much. I will be thinking of you on Christmas Day and of all the things you'll be doing for your patients on that day.
Thank you very much. It's been very good to talk to you.
So sadly, I couldn't be in our latest interview with the lovely hospice nurse, Karen, because of a poorly dog. But I've just listened and it is a beautiful listen. And Claire, firstly, tell me, how was it?
I loved it. I loved our conversation. It was so rich in the reasons why she does what she does and why she loves it. Many people who've experienced hospice nurses say that they are spectacular people, but often they say, I don't know how they do their job. But actually, I think listening to Karen, I could absolutely see why she does her job. She gets so much satisfaction from being able to do kind of proper nursing, really looking after people and caring for each person. She's made for the job. It actually made me want to be a nurse, and I would be the worst nurse in the world. But she spoke with such conviction and such passion about what she does. I just thought it came across beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you also got a real like you work in a hospice at the moment, and you have previously as well. I don't necessarily have that insight, but I felt like the interview really gave that to me, what a hospice is all about, what it means to be a hospice nurse, and really how much it means to the people who work there. I think she spoke a lot about there can be this kind of preconception that hospice is a very sad places where people go to die, and clearly that's just not the case. They can be beautiful, joyful, hopeful places as well. And what better message to put out to our listeners at Christmas? It really moved me, the conversation. And like you say, Karen spoke about how nursing had been a calling for her since I think it was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, that really came across in the
Yeah.
conversation. You could really tell how passionate she was, and what lucky people at the hospice to have her as their nurse. Beautiful.
Definitely. And you're right, there are some serious messages in there too. Hospices have an uphill battle to squash some quite big myths and misunderstandings, like, as you said, that so many patients come in, get the help they need and go home again. As people don't know that, and it's a really difficult one to overcome. And also that they really, really need the medical profession outside of hospices to recognise that seeking hospice care is not a failure, that actually the skills and expertise that they can provide to someone for whom further curative treatment will not work actually adds an amazing amount of value to their lives and the experience that they'll have from that point. So it's a big challenge. And actually, as you said, someone who works for a hospice, I believe it's really down to all of us who work for them and know this to break down those barriers and misgivings and have these conversations and let people know. So I'm really thrilled to get this episode out because I think she faces some of those really head on and makes it really clear. And you're right, it's lovely thinking, what should we be doing today for people in the hospice, isn't it?
Yeah, it will. Yeah.
I've no doubt that they'll be having a really special Christmas with her there, for those who are still on the inpatient unit at Saint Francis Hospice.
Yeah. And I think when we're eating our Christmas dinner, unwrapping our presents, I think it's good to have spare a thought to those people who are in the hospice. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the listen.
Very much so. So from us, whether you're listening at work, like Karen, if you're a hospice patient or you're receiving treatment for another illness, if you're at home with family, or if you're travelling, or if you're on your own, have a peaceful Christmas from us both.
Yeah. Happy Christmas, everybody.
If you enjoyed the episode, please like, rate and subscribe to help us reach more people, or follow us on Instagram at The Changemakers Pod. This has been The Changemakers.